Welcome to MTMG's IT Roundtable, where we bring the power of human connections to the tech world. Our experts become part of your team, so whatever tech problem is keeping you up at night, we can help you solve it.
Joining me today is Tim Colwell, Executive Vice President at AOTMP, the authority on technology management practices. Tim's been there 23 years, wouldn't know it, but I'll believe him. He architected the Efficiency First framework, he holds a patent on telecom environment management, and he wrote the guidebook a good chunk of this industry benchmarks against. His LinkedIn headline says unapologetic, unfiltered, and useful. Today, we're getting into what AOTMP actually is, what's keeping technology leaders up at night, and why the people doing this work keep finding each other. Tim, thanks so much for joining.
Hey, I appreciate you having me, Paul.
Well, full disclosure, I was in the mobile managed services space, and we looked up to AOTMP as the gold standard. This is who we had to try to be. I shouldn't say try to be. We had to live up to their standards, and this is how we should be measuring ourselves. So we took it very seriously. So thank you so much for doing the work you do. And I guess for the listeners, what is AOTMP and what problem does it exist to solve?
Yeah, that's a question we get often. Who are you? What are you about? And kind of bluntly, why should I care? Right? I mean, that's what people are interested in, right? And so AOTMP is really about creating an ecosystem where practitioners of technology management, operational, financial, some technical aspects, where they can learn and grow. And we really have built a community by which people can share information, share successes, share failures, share gotchas, whatever it may be, but where people can really crowdsource and work with their peers to solve problems that are hitting us up every single day.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the biggest problems that in the industry that we seek to solve is being able to get the right information and the right best practices at the right time to the people who need them. Technology is evolving at a breakneck pace, and it always has. But often when you take a look at like IT operations wants to be very measured, wants to be very precise, wants to reduce risk, all the things that everybody really wants. Today, we hardly have enough time to either understand what's changing with the technology, with the regulations, with the industry, even with the vendors that are offering the solutions that we might consume. And it becomes very challenging. And so peers want to be able to reach out and say, hey, I've got this problem. Who has a problem like it? How have you solved it? What makes it hum? What makes it not work? Things like that. So in our ecosystem, we're really building a community for technology management professionals to learn, connect, and improve every single day as everything changes around us.
Mm-hmm. I think that's something that was a misunderstanding when I was in the MMS space. We always looked at it as, okay, well, here's the things we're supposed to be doing, but it was just about that checklist. And I think what you guys have evolved over the years has been turning that into the community that it's become, where IT leaders, finance leaders, people that are purchasing these services can now learn from each other, like you were saying. I think that is so critically needed today, more than ever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, I've always said people are smart. Give somebody a problem, and given enough trial and error and enough time, people are going to solve the problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's just the way things work. But wouldn't it be nice if you had the cheat code that says, here are the best practices that have worked for X, Y, and Z organizations, and maybe even more importantly, here's why they work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here's the sauce behind it that is making this so special. And like I said before, it's kind of an interesting paradox because we're in an age in which there are AI assistants everywhere, attached to everything, right? we've got that. We've got Google. We've got troves of information. Like finding information in 2026 is simple. Vetting that information to know what's truth, what's maybe fiction, and how to actualize that truth, right? So it fits in my world and it fits in my circumstances is difficult. It's hard. And so by having a community of people that can help share insights, because everybody's on the same journey, we're just in different stages of the journey. But having people that you can lean into and say, hey, I'm looking to solve this problem with my technology in my organization. What challenges did you run into with regulations or with finance or with the CISO office or, whatever the question is. And we want to be able to, we want to be able to be the place where people will say, hey, AOTMP, I can join the advisory council. I can be part of these meetings. I can be part of these insights. And there's adequate give and take between everyone.
And I think just as a case in point to what you were just talking about, that there's so much information available that everybody can get today, but you have to be able to critique it and know what's the real information from the false. And even if it's all real information, knowing that they actually belong together. And what I learned firsthand is in researching for this episode, I found a Louisiana swamp rock band that had an album out and their name was Timothy Colwell. And I reached out to you and said, I wish this was you, but I have a feeling it's not. But that's the case in point. And that happens in all sorts of things. You run through these AI tools and they make these wild assumptions that are based on some little grain of truth, and then they can run with it in a way that just is so unfortunate. So I think it happens far too often, but it's a really important point.
Yeah, and I think that it's really having what I would call vetted and useful information, right? Not just having data points. And I've often said that if three random people have the same question, everybody's thinking about it,
And that's a great point.
Yeah, and that kind of gives us at AOTMP a North Star to say, hey, wait a minute, this is either a challenge or an opportunity that we need to seize. Let's figure this out. Let's work with the community of peers that can say, hey, on paper, this is what the scenario looked like. In reality, here's what, you need to know. And I think that, one other thing I'll share, I'll give you a concrete example here. I think most people want guidance, want insights so that they can make the right decisions for their organization. One of the questions that I've gotten through the years that I know you'll appreciate from your background is, what's the best MMS model for my organization? Should I have corporate owned, corporate managed, corporate paid devices? Should I have BYOD devices? Bring your own devices? Should I have a stipend program? What's the best model? And unfortunately, there is an answer to that question for anybody that asks it, but it's not the same answer.
Right.
It depends upon your organization. It depends upon what you want to accomplish. What are your outcomes? Why are you asking the question in the first place? It depends upon whether you're in a regulated industry or not. It also depends on shifting tides of, I'll say, business sentiment around, CapEx and OpEx models, right? I mean, there's a lot of ingredients that go into it. And so using that as an example, AOTMP can provide customer insights to anybody that wants to ask the question, not about which is the best model, but how do you make the decision and what are the factors that go into what's right for your circumstance, not what's right for everybody, right? And I think that's a good example of how, AOTMP works with enterprises to, share the information that's needed. And quite frankly, why we want to become that resource for practical guidance on how to best manage your technology estate today.
So what are technology leaders most focused on today? And where are you seeing the biggest pain points?
Oh, hands down, it's AI. It's very complicated because what the concern is that, you have sitting out in front of you an opportunity to use a technology that is in the process of maturing. And it's maybe not in its infancy, maybe it's a little bit farther along than that, but it's still maturing and evolving, right? And you have this opportunity to automate, to accelerate, to help individuals think about solving problems in a different way, right? It's like having, the entire library at your fingertips at a click.
Mm-hmm.
And so on that one hand, organizations are encouraging staff to become AI literate, to understand what they can, what it can do, how it can help them in their respective roles. And by the way, this isn't just in IT, it's in every aspect of business, right? And so that's kind of, we have the promise of productivity, acceleration, greater benefits, maybe even tools that can help you reduce risk. All these are very positive business attributes. But then you peel back the onion just a smidge. How are we going to pay for it? How do paying for tokens work? How do I budget for that? How do I ensure that my company's proprietary data is not feeding the beast?
Mm-hmm.
How do I ensure that I am not putting PII for my employees or my customers at risk using an AI model that, is open, right? In some way, shape, or form. And so you got a paradox here. So you've got AI tools that are essentially crowdsourcing all the information that they can get, and that's how they become better, smarter, more accurate. And then you've got companies going, yeah, but we don't want to do that. We want to benefit from it. We don't want to contribute to how it actually works. And so what that leads to is security, privacy, intellectual property protection, all of kind of the business concerns. And the unfortunate thing is that there aren't necessarily clear-cut answers to all those problems. So people are working through it, right? And it's just a really interesting cycle. And the other thing I'll mention on that front is that there are many cases in which I'll say the IT folks that are asked to implement, adopt, or provide a solution or software that is AI enabled, they're not necessarily the ones that are fully in the loop on the governance, the business governance of it. And so you gotta loop in a lot of people. As is with any business decision, when you have to have representatives from each pillar of the business chiming in on all their concerns, you're going to end up with something that is slow, full of red tape, maybe not optioned quite, as you had envisioned it. And so you don't get full benefit of it. And so there's this weird dynamic where it's, run fast and adopt. And then on the back end, it's like, but be very, very cautious because this could be the riskiest thing our organization ever does. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, I kind of get geeked out about problems like this because they're evolving in front of our eyes and they're changing. Right. It's kind of like with laws and regulations. Laws aren't made because people had the foresight to know that a problem will exist in 10 years. It's reactionary against the bad thing that just happened or the unintended consequence that has an impact on society. So the discussion of how do I safely adopt AI within the safe parameters I determine for my business, that is going to be a leading topic for years to come, right? That's going to have a lot of evolutionary twists.
I couldn't agree more. We are doing a separate podcast stream with a partner of ours that's all about leadership in the age of AI. And we definitively take the point that we're not going to talk about the technology. It's all about how are leaders building their organizations to be resilient for it, to plan for it, to be receptive of it. What do they need to do to their entire orchestration of their data? All of those pieces are just as critical, if not more critical, than the actual technology itself. And that's the whole premise there. And you're saying it beautifully, that is exactly what we're facing. And I thought the analogy on laws being, reactionary, not foresight, is terrifying, in that a lot of what we're building with AI is going so fast that I do worry that there's not enough guardrails in place, because it could get away from us. And this is, in my view, one of the most game-changing technologies that has been around in my lifetime, at least. And I use it every day. I think it has made our business as good as it is, but it is something that we have to be really mindful about. And you hit also on the token cost. We're getting so lured in with all of these $20 all-you-can-eat plans, when in the background, they are much more expensive than that. And as enterprises go to implement these things, it is a vastly different cost paradigm than what the consumer is used to seeing. So I think the ability to learn with people that are going through the same thing, from really intelligent and well-informed people at AOTMP and the group that you've cultivated in this community, are so valuable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's really about peers who have been in the weeds that can help you solve your problems faster, right? Mm-hmm. And when I say in the weeds, I don't necessarily, it's in the weeds from a tactical and a strategic perspective, right? If you have a lived, shared experience, it's kind of like one of the sayings that I've often keen on saying is that every plan I have ever developed in business or for my personal life that I put on a whiteboard has been perfect in every way until I went to implement it. That's when reality smacks you up against the face and you go, okay, good idea, but yeah, okay, not really. And we got to pivot, we got to change, we got to do all this kind of stuff. And so when I say in the weeds, I mean, it's the people that have, dove in head first and have navigated the waters and said, wait a minute, here is something that if I had known before I started, fill in the blank, I would have saved $1 gazillion. I would have been more effective. I would have been able to articulate a business case better, whatever that statement is. And so one of the things that our community often asks is, I'll have somebody reach out and say, hey, what's a good topic? Oh, I'll give you a great topic here, right? Because this is one of these that's been urgent and top of mind for 10 years. And that's wireline decommissioning or POTS decommissioning, right? Mm-hmm. Get rid of all the copper. And so and this really has been going on for about 10 years now, maybe 8, but it's been going on for a minute. And you would think that there isn't a soul in the United States that works in IT or telecom that hasn't heard about this, right? But I'll tell you, I've run across several very experienced professionals who are like, hey, I just got this notice from my carrier about getting rid of copper. What's this all about? What are the options I can explore? And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, you've been buried under a rock. But the interesting thing is that these kind of questions that come, yeah, they have been buried under a rock, and it's the rock of all of the stuff that they've been doing to keep the IT machine running, right? They've been putting out the fires. They've been, very involved in all the activities they are. And maybe this just isn't one that rose to the surface, right? Right. And so somebody reaches out and I'm like, oh, okay, well, let me connect you with 3 or 4 folks who I know have solved this problem. And maybe they're in a similar business vertical, or they have a similar set of, business parameters or constraints. And they'll tell you what the real deal is, right? They'll say, hey, I did a trial with XYZ. They promised them, they haven't been able to ship yet. Or, hey, here's something I never even knew, and you should check these guys out because X, Y, and Z, right? And so it's those type of insights and intel that I think that our community really values, and they really crave that. And one other thing I'll camp on, which just kind of occurred to me, is sometimes we have people join who are just there to listen in. And they ask questions like, hey, what should I be thinking about? What's the next thing on the horizon that's going to cause me either an issue or going to cause me to need to do something, or, whatever the action is, right? And so sometimes people just hang out to hear what other people are talking about so that they can brainstorm with themselves about, hey, how does this situation, circumstance, or event affect my business? What should I be thinking about that I'm not? Help me get ahead in the brainstorming arena.
Mm-hmm. I think that's brilliant. The next question I was going to go to is give me some shared experience examples, but we've already done that now. So let's move on to, you run both virtual and live events.
Mm-hmm.
What does each format do that the other can't? And how do you do those events, or how do those events build momentum that lasts past the event itself?
Yeah. That's a great question, and really how we're differentiating the live online events and the live in-person events. The live online events we have two major events a year. The 4 hours in duration, 8 sessions, 25 minutes apiece, so people can get up and they don't have to sit in front of the screen for 4 solid hours. And typically we have in those, I would call them fast-paced topics, where people can share their experiences, their insights on, a variety of technology management topics. For example, we had a great session, can't remember when this was, back in the spring, where we had a handful of technology management folks share their experiences with how they handle mergers and acquisitions to be effective, right? There was one organization that goes through, they acquire small mom and pop type organizations at a rapid pace, several a week. There's another organization that does big multi-billion-dollar mergers, right? And so the question of not how do you just, not what is the checklist item, but how do you ensure effective technological transfer of information, of networks and all that kind of stuff. And also, with the budget in mind, right? So they shared, their experiences about, what worked for them, how they affect change within their organization. There was another organization that talked exclusively about 3 large divestitures that they had done, right, with different business units and how they stood those up. And so all of a sudden, that becomes a playbook for 2 or 3 different scenarios in the M&A world as it affects technology management folks, how they keep the voice, data, and wireless connectivity humming. So that information is shared in kind of a Q&A type format, and people can watch that. But then what we do afterwards is we take all that information that is shared and we put it into a list of do's and don'ts, best practices, key takeaways from the session. And then that becomes an artifact that's memorialized that is shared with all of the members. They have access to that and they can reference that information. So online events tend to be sharing of information and sharing of experiences, whereas the live events give us an opportunity to dig in a little bit deeper, spend more time building the community with our peers. There's a lot more networking associated with those events that allow people to not only get the information, but allow us to dig a little bit deeper. We have more time, right, over a day and a half, 2 days, to be able to, share the information. And what we find happens with the live events that is just part of being face-to-face is people will spend a lot of time talking to their peers about topics that matter to them, things that may not even be on the agenda for the panels or the presentations. And that's an opportunity to dig deeper and really build community. And what we find is that not only do those folks, after they've, met face-to-face and had that experience, a lot of times they carry the networking with them from folks that they've met, just in the real world. They become professional colleagues that, that can continue the conversation. And so we want to provide experiences and information that really suits everybody's learning style and also allows us to not just cover the topics, but also to dig deep and to create shared experiences that, hopefully make everybody's technology management learning experience, better and lasting.
I completely agree. And I think the piece that just keeps really, really resonating with me is, especially specifically with the online, is that there's those artifacts afterwards that take all of this great sharing and learning, and now it's there memorialized. You can go back and get it again. I think that's a great piece. But then the part about the in-person events, I think all of those things that you were talking about are completely vital. But it's the piece that I thought really resonates most with the people that I talk to every day is those personal connections. It's there between sessions, they're grabbing a coffee and they're talking to that person next to them who happens to be going through exactly what they're going through. And that connection lasts so much longer than the event. And those are the things that you just can't replace in an online event or through any sort of conference call. Those in-person events that you run are just so critical for that specifically.
Yeah. And there's also an interesting, I don't know if phenomenon is the right word, but there's an interesting dynamic with an in-person event, and that is presence.
Mm-hmm.
It is very easy, and I'll raise my hand, I'm guilty of this. It's very easy to join an online event and maybe you're only interested in one or two of the topics, right? So you are multitasking, which isn't really a thing. It's doing something else instead of doing what you should be doing, right? And so then people are checking email and they're looking at other stuff and they kind of got an ear open for that one keyword that's going to make them go, oh, wait a minute, I need to pay attention to this. And it's easy to do that, right? And it's easy because you're remote and nobody sees what you're doing. And okay. It's a little bit more difficult to do that when you're in a room with everybody else. Sure, people are going to check their emails and do all that. But if somebody's not interested in the panel presentation topic or it isn't germane for their world, oftentimes they'll turn to whoever's sitting at the table next to them and spark a conversation about something that is important to them, right? And when you're in front of people face to face, it's much easier to be present and it's much more normal. And I think that what leads to the knowledge share and the relationships. And then ultimately the action you're going to take with what you've learned when you get back to the office, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is really the most important part of the whole thing. What's the outcome?
Completely agreed. I know we're running a little long and I love it. We're going to have you back because there's just too many other things I'd like to talk about. But if someone's new to AOTMP, what should they expect to find first? And if you could leave listeners with one idea about AOTMP, what would it be?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the thing that I want to leave is that if you work for an organization in some capacity that supports technology management, you could be an IT finance, you could be an IT ops, whatever that role is. It could be mobility management, right? I would say go to AOTMP and for free, by the way, join our advisory council. You'll get information, you'll get some of these shared experiences. You're going to get a great sense of what we're about. And what I've often said to folks who maybe are hesitant about that is you sign up, you spend an hour a month during lunch. Well, I guess it depends on what time zone you're in, 12 to 1 Eastern, second Tuesday of every month, in a meeting with your peers on 2 or 3 different topics. You're going to get something out of it. You will learn something. I promise you that.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's not your jam, that's fine. But what we found is that people keep coming back because they're aware of the sense that if the topic on the table isn't important to them today, they're going to learn something. They'll be able to use it down the road when it does become important.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I would say. And then, kind of the one takeaway about AOTMP is we help people, smart people, by the way, move from this idea of isolated effort where you have to figure it out on your own or with your own concise team to shared effort and shared progress with peers that are doing the same job you're doing that are in a different part of the journey. So you can help people if you step past a milestone that they're not at yet, and they can help you if they've already completed that milestone. And together, that shared progress, I think, helps evolve the value of technology management across the industry.
Yes. Couldn't have said it better myself. So nicely done. This was, I've known about AOTMP for years. I think more people need to. It is just such an incredibly valuable resource. And one thing we didn't really touch on is that you are pretty adamant about not taking any vendor commissions, nothing. You are 100% agnostic. And that is something that I think I would be remiss if I didn't let you just kind of expand on that a little bit before we wrap.
Sure, right on. Yeah. So we have in our community, we have certified vendors. They are vendors that have gone through our process of analysis that ultimately we bump them up against the best practices through our efficiency first framework. If you meet or exceed the bar, then you become certified. And ultimately, whatever the vendor's good product or service is, what we're looking at is outcomes, results, not feature functionality. Anybody can do a feature functionality matrix. But anyway, we're looking at outcomes. If you're interested in learning about any of our certified vendors, we'll give you a brief on them. We'll tell you, what works, what doesn't work, where you should go, you should look at. We also collect information just about all sorts of vendors in the marketplace, and we'll give you a kind of our unfiltered view on experiences that your peers have shared with us. And the reason we do that is I'll go back to the MMS example I used earlier. There's not a one size fits all for everybody answer to any question you're going to ask, right? There just isn't. I wish there was. I mean, I'd own my own private island if I had that, right? We wouldn't be chatting today. I'd be on the beach sipping a Mai Tai or something. But we again want to share the insights that we've had. And the flip side of that is that if you ask us about a vendor or a vendor experience or a product or a service, and we don't have any insight into it, we'll tell you that too. That we'll give you that flip side. We're not here to make stuff up. We're here to be a vessel of information that helps you make the right decisions, or at least make decisions that are perhaps a bit more informed by peer experiences.
Mm-hmm. I think that's fantastic. So thank you so much for joining. This was a great conversation. I am absolutely going to hold you to it, kind of bringing you back. So thank you so much for joining today.
Oh, absolutely. My pleasure, Paul.
So that brings us to the end of today's conversation. Thank you for joining us. If today's discussion resonated with you, please consider giving us a 5-star review. Your feedback not only supports our show, but also helps others find us. Thank you so much for listening to MTMG's IT Roundtable. We look forward to bringing you more conversations soon. Until then, take care, and know our team is always here to help. Sláinte
MTMG, guidance that empowers.